Winter. Time for ice fishing, snowmobiles, and maybe a little pond hockey. Winter's full of fun and games. Until a pipe freezes and bursts. Get ahead of the freezing weather with Mow and Flow. It monitors your home's water and shuts it off automatically before it can burst your winter plans. Moen.
Do you know where you were February 7th, 1999? Well, that was the very first episode of Jedi Talk, the first Star Wars podcast. So today on Bantha Milk Podcast, we salute Jedi Talk by joining in with the other Star Wars podcast and celebrating Star Wars Podcast Day 2025. This is the 5th year of Star Wars Podcast Day, and we are going to have an all-new Around the Dejarik Table with 2 awesome guests. So, let's have at it. Intro music.
Feels no good to be dead. Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
Yes, it is. Welcome to Bantha Milk Presents Around the Dejarik Table, the podcast where 4 Star Wars superfans ask 4 burning questions about the galaxy far, far away. I'm your host, and each episode I'll be joined by my co-host, Tom. Hello, Tom.
Hello there.
And whether you are a Jedi Master, a Sith Lord, or somewhere in between, this is the place to have your Star Wars questions answered. Don't worry, I don't have a bad feeling about this because today we have 2 very special guests with us. First, we have Tage, who comes to us from DL Weekly and the Hub Crawl, and James, who also comes to us from DL Weekly. I promise he will not ask us trivia questions, unless it's a trap. Hello, Tage. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hello, welcome. I don't know why I'm saying welcome. It's not my podcast. I guess I'm just so used to being on the other side. I'm a Disney nerd. Of course, I do the DL Weekly podcast, which is all about Disneyland. I'm one of the co-hosts over there. I have another I am a co-host on another podcast called the Hub Crawl, which seems familiar for some reason.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
And I would consider myself a Star Wars enjoyer. I am not the Star Wars super nerd, but I feel like I know enough that I can be part of this table at least for a little while.
Well, thank you very much, Tag. That is awesome. By the way, as you said, I did steal this idea from the Hub Crawl, so thank you very much. And to finish off our panel, we have James, also from DL Weekly, because he does all the trivia and stuff there. I enjoy the trivia. It's way higher than I could answer. So, James, please tell us stuff about you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. The brains behind the naming of Hub Crawl, which I take a lot of pride in. But otherwise, I'm just your average, overly positive Star Wars fan, just like everyone else is out there. I am a certified super fan. On our last Disney cruise, I won the second time I tried to do the Disney Super Fan Challenge, or the Star Wars Super Fan Challenge. I won the Marvel one on the first try, which doesn't feel as fitting, but here we are. And most importantly, I am waiting for the sequels to get the Clone Wars treatment. And last caveat, it's my mom's birthday. So happy birthday, Mom, who is definitely not going to listen to this podcast because she knows nothing about Star Wars.
Or podcasts.
That's also true.
Well, happy birthday to her. We sent her a cake, but I guess, she didn't get that either since she didn't know that we sent her a cake. So sorry about that. So that is wonderful. I want to thank both of you for joining us. And let's get started, shall we? I'm going to start with my first question. What is something you would love to see in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge that is not there now? Since you 2 guys are Disney people, I know you have visited the parks numerous times and have been to Galaxy's Edge. I thought that this would be a good question for you guys to elaborate on. So, Tag, go ahead. You hit us up first.
Well, I'm actually surprised that James is even here today because if it was up to him, he would just live in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
And for those people who were around social media when Star Wars Galaxy's Edge launched, I believe it's called Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge, as they always called it. You said something, which sounds like one thing, and then I kind of went crazy. More kinetic movement. I want to see movement in the land. I want to see banthas walking around. I want to see droids moving around. I want to see characters. I want to see just tons of movement in the land. I want to see ship drones. Back when Galaxy's Edge opened, if I remember correctly, they had like X-wings that were drones like in the sky, so it looked like they like flew over and stuff. Why don't we have those more often? That would be amazing. They have this Fire of the Rising Suns fireworks experience there. Why not have these drones fly over it? That would be wonderful. Like I said earlier, more droids walking around. Why do we not have more droids? They're so easy. They should be everywhere. They should be beeping and bopping and booping and talking to everybody. Just crazy. Obviously, we also should have a Star Wars restaurant. I know we have Oga's Cantina, but that place is way too small. I want an entire dining experience, like a sit down meal, like whole, like encompassing environment. That's what I want. I know that was not one something, that was a lot of things, but I feel like that's what I want total. Also, now that I'm talking, get out of the stuck time period. Let it be any time period. Let Darth Vader walk around. Let Kylo Ren walk around. Let Qui-Gon Jinn walk around. Who cares?
I agree.
People that visit don't care.
And people who visit want to see all those people also. They don't care about this one specific time frame. I agree with all of you. And especially Tom and I are both up here in New Jersey. There's lots of drones flying around New Jersey all the time. So if we can have them flying around here, they can definitely make some X-Wing drones flying around up there. I don't see why not. But yes, I agree with you. You took everyone's answer, so we just can move on.
I'm sorry. But you know what else they should have done? As I'm sitting here, what else they should have done is they should have made it because it was such a big land, right? They should have made it where you could have the prequel, like there's a section that's like the prequel era, and then you have a section that's the original trilogy area, and then you have a section that's the sequel era. Like the area is big enough, you could transition through all that and have everybody kind of segregated in their own little things. They didn't need to go crazy. I know they were just trying to respond to the Wizarding World, which was done very, very well.
Yeah.
But anyway, James, you didn't write something, so I probably took all of your answers. I want to hear what you want to see.
Surprise, you didn't.
I listed everything.
You listed everything,
but you didn't. Yeah, I think the land is making a lot of great progress on a lot of those things. Having a few more characters, it's not just Vi Marati, who you're supposed to know who's this character
right.
is. Suddenly, another one of those names, right?
The character they made up just for the land that nobody knows who that person is. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they're adding characters, which is good. The food has always been excellent there. But what we're missing is that time to sit down and have an entertainment show. I think about how good they've done with other components. I think about what was maybe trying to be a thing on the Galactic Star Cruiser. And I think you could really have that great element and really kind of build up to it. Disney, especially Disney Parks, knows how to figure out this choreography and make it pretty exciting and crazy. And they could tell a nice story to really kind of add to the experience of where you are. And again, hopefully elevate up that sequel trilogy that I have my beef with on a lot of things, which is why I'm waiting for that Clone Wars treatment. But I think that's what's missing. They have the space where they're trying to make you feel like you're lost in the Resistance space as you walk through there. You have a lot of opportunity. They've shown that they can figure things out, like with the fireworks that they've adapted in to be part of the fireworks show in Disneyland, where they have that different angle and music working. This is just the element that's not there, and I think they need it.
We had talked on one of our other episodes, I think we were talking about Galaxy's Edge a little bit, and right across the street is an abandoned hotel that they gave up on. They have all this space. They could do something in there. I mean, we talked about how you could make a little bridge that goes over there, have that be like a light speed, some type of light speed canal to get over to the other building. And you have a whole building that you could fill with experiences for Star Wars. So a lot of the things that we talked about can be done inside that building.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. Like
I
when we were in Disneyland Paris and they had the Lion King show in its dedicated building. It's like it's just so nice to have that.
yeah.
Mhm.
I also love your idea of the show as well, because we don't really have a show. When we went to Walt Disney World, at one point we're walking through Galaxy's Edge. I'm sorry, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
And there you go. And Ray was like fixing one of the ships that was behind a wall. So she had some kind of like big wrench thing, and she's like tapping here, tapping there, moving little things and whatever. And it was neat. I'm like waiting for her to do something else, and that was all she was doing, was just pretending to fix it. And then she walked away. And then later on at night, and I know it happens more at Disneyland than it does at Disney World, but later on at night, she was just walking around in front of the Millennium Falcon and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. My son was with me because he wanted to ride Smuggler's Run as the last thing of the night. So we waited. I think the park in Disney World closed at, say, 9:30. So we waited till like 9:15. We started running over there. We're like, oh, we're going to have an hour wait. You know, it's not going to be till 10:30 when we leave, and it's going to be people sweeping the ground and just us. It's going to be so cool. There was no line whatsoever. And we walked. It took us, we were like, we could have ran through the zigzags, through the kickbacks, whatever they're called, because there was nobody there. We got all the way up to where the resistance first, finds you and that stuff. And there was like 8 people with us and whatever. It went so fast. We got out of there. It was like 9:40. And my son was like, oh, I really wanted to stay later. And I'm like, I understand, but now we're too late, so we can't get on any of the rides. But yeah, it is missing some sort of an entertainment thing. And even back in the day, my kids, when they were little, they did the lightsaber training, which was fun. Tom, I don't know if your kids did that. If one of the
Yeah,
times.
they did it in front of Star Tours.
Yeah, and it's in front of Star Tours. It was so much fun. They taught them like 4 moves and whatever, and then you had either Darth Vader or Kylo Ren, and my kids were lucky Darth Vader came out, and it was so cool. It was like, oh my god. But like I don't think even that's there anymore. So like that would be something that you could even put back in Galaxy's Edge. So
And they can't use lack of space for an excuse, because when we were kids and when you went to Epcot to the World Showcase, there were a couple countries that every now and then, I'll use Italy as an example, they would just have this guy come on a cart. He would set up like a rope, like in the middle of the square, and just call everybody over and do like a little 15-minute show.
Yeah.
You could easily do that with Star Wars characters.
Yeah, 100%. And it would be a lot of fun with any of the Star Wars characters, Darth Vader, Chewbacca, whatever. It'll be lots of fun to do that. So yeah, that's a great idea. Great idea,
Well,
James.
and they have a scripted show that they're not doing anymore from the Galactic Star Cruiser.
Yeah.
You could take all of that stuff and put it. I mean, in Disneyland, they had a Children's Miracle Network like fundraiser event, and they had a little show. And I'm like, why don't they have this show normally? It was up on the catwalk area above the speeder garage or whatever, and there was they had some pyrotechnics with lightsabers and stuff. Why do they not have that more often?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just silly.
It is silly.
They're just wasting so many opportunities with that land.
Yeah, and also the real lightsaber that they had for the Galactic Star Cruiser is now just sitting on somebody's desk. So they could use that on that same place that you just said would be perfect, because I think on the Galactic Star Cruiser she turned it on, it came out, and then you saw her like drop it and pick up a real one that she started. Yeah, she did a big switch there. But they could do the same thing up on that catwalk. So yeah, I agree. All right.
So the one thing that I think they missed the ball on and missed a big opportunity is to have a pod racing simulator. I mean, you think about it, we just went to Universal twice in the last couple of years. Their whole parks are simulators.
Yeah.
I mean, you could really have, with Disney money, you could make a really great podcast simulator, and you could make it where it's not like a preset thing. You could have 4 to 6 people all race at the same time against each other. and make it where it's different every single time you ride the ride. So it's not the same ride, same person wins. It's just a simulator. This, you can actually ride something, race against a whole bunch of people. And I think it would just make it for a different ride every single time. If you think back to the trilogy, especially like just episode 1, narrowing on that's probably one of the most popular parts of the movie.
Yeah.
You have the Darth Maul fight, and then you have the pod racing. Those are the two things that people remember the most. So I think they missed an opportunity here to have something really neat like that.
And they have the technology with the Banshees that they have for Avatar Land. So they could definitely do something very similar to that, where it would be...
Yep. The downside is they were supposed to have multiple missions available on the Smuggler's Run attraction, and they still haven't done that, which, like, what's going on there? I just saw a Reddit post, I want to say yesterday, talking about how people are upset because it seems like the rotation of scenes for Star Tours is not as random as it used to be, that they're getting a lot of the same thing over and over again. So I don't know why Disney has done things that seemed doable in the past but now can't be done with the same. It just seems like they're having
I might actually have an answer
issues
for that. I think it's because they're trying to force the new trilogy on everybody. So you know, because the last couple times that I've ridden it, it's been all Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
If you think back in the day, it was Darth Vader as well. So now I think they're kind of force feeding a lot of the newer characters, trying to get everyone, to buy into the new trilogy.
The challenge is they're not doing anything else for it. Like, yeah, there's the Rey movie coming up, maybe it's got a new writer for, but it's like there's just nothing else. There's no reason for it, and there's so much content out there. Like the Phasma book is one of my favorite examples because it is so good at showing where her character came from and why she should have been so much cooler, but it just doesn't exist, and it's never going mainstream.
Yeah, and even just the behind the scenes of Star Tours, going from the original, which was done all on film strip, and they had the giant film that wrapped basically around the entire cockpit, to now that it's digital, like, it takes up no space. It can easily be switched between scenes, like every single time. The randomizer could be set to more than just 1 to 4. It could be set, there's how many different scenes are there? Is there like 18 or something different scenes, or maybe even more than that, I think?
There's a lot, and they're all,
Yeah. So like,
Wow.
it could easily, be more random than it is. It stinks that it's not. But
I will tell you though, Tom, I'm one of the people that the pod racing sequence in that movie is like the one that I'm like, and we're skipping. To me, it feels like it goes on forever.
It does go on a long way, but remember, that was hugely popular with younger kids.
Oh, I'm sure.
For the older ones like us, we're like, okay.
It's like the the Fast and the Furious from the first movie, Fast and the Furious, when they had the quarter-mile drag race, which is supposed to last about 6 seconds. In the movie, it's like 1.5 minutes long, 2 minutes long, and it's like, how long is this race that they're doing? So the pod racer scene did go a little bit too long, and it did confuse me as to how Anakin's pod racer didn't start. They got so far ahead, and then suddenly that quickly he was able to catch up to them, but he then couldn't pass them as quickly as he could catch up to them. It was a little strange there, but whatever.
I thought the whole pod race was corny. I mean, with Greg Proops being the announcer.
Oh yeah,
and he was he's a comedian. Like, I don't know. It was just, the whole thing was a little corny.
Yeah, but the kids loved it, so
they did. Well, Rob, since the three of us have fixed Galaxy's Edge for you, now it's your time to answer your own question.
Yeah, and I mean, I said very similar to what Tag said. I want more interaction. They have the droids there just sitting behind a wall. Like, even if they made them move, like, they didn't have to move out, but make their head turn, make them beep and boop a little bit. See more good guys walking around or even running by and recruiting people. And then I thought this would be super fun if randomly. Instagram and vloggers and those, what are the influencers? Thank you, Jesus, influencers. Not that you guys are those or anything like that, but but so that way
we ain't influencing anything.
you're informing us very well, though. But so influencers can't like time and be the ones that do it. Like it would be so fun to have just like a random group of like rebels running through real fast and grab like some kids and their families or something to be like, quick, we have a mission for you. Can you help us out with this mission? And they take you to some, little back room of some sort and explain what the mission is, and almost kind of like what they used to have in Disney World, where they had like pagers almost. It was like a Kim Possible at one point had like a pager thing, and you would go around. They have it for the app now, I know, where you can go around Galaxy's Edge with the app and hit a couple of different things, and then you can make the Millennium Falcon shoot gas out and stuff like that.
So like the wands in Harry Potter world.
Yeah, kind of like the wands. But with this, like when those rebels come running through and take you to the back room, then other actors would come out where Rey was fixing the ship. They could have some random person fixing the ship, or even Rey for that matter. It doesn't matter. And one of the things is you have to go find, this person who's fixing the ship, and you go find them, and you tell them a secret code, and they beep, boop, boop, put something into a little data pad that you have, and then maybe then that ship does something, and at the end, maybe there's like, it doesn't have to be fireworks, but like confetti comes out, and, and it would be completely random, maybe 2 times a day at the most. You never know when it is, and, the rebel people can see people who are waiting for them and just run past them and go to just some other random family. Like that would be something really fun and really different. And how special would it be if you were that random family that somebody just came up to and was like, hey, can you help us? Yeah. So that's my idea there.
Rob, I got instead of your confetti and fireworks, I got the perfect ending.
Okay.
The entire like main part of the land that track from A New Hope plays, where they get the medal ceremony, and like all of the residents of Batu come out, and then you're like led down the middle, and you go up on the little stage, and you get like a little medal. That would be amazing.
Awesome.
That would be amazing.
Yeah,
that would be so awesome. That would be so cool.
And then you get like a cool photo op, like Chewie's up there.
Chewie shows up there.
Characters.
He doesn't get the medal though. You get the medal.
No.
Chewie still doesn't
you
get
get
the
it, and then you're chilling with them, and you get a nice little PhotoPass photo added to your app.
Right. And then Chewie walks away sad for the 3rd time because he still doesn't get a medal. So, yes, I love it. That's a perfect ending. Disney, you heard it here first.
We need to be Imagineers. We should just quit our jobs and go work for Disney.
Go work for
and
Disney.
be Imagineers.
I know these guys are full of creative ideas, so we could do it. All right, now that's one question. Tag, you're up. What's your question for us?
So one of the things that I enjoy most about Star Wars, besides the movies and TV shows, which I really love, are the video games. And my question for everybody is, what is your favorite Star Wars video game? I'm hoping that you can give me some good ideas, because I'd like to play some more Star Wars video games. We'll start with James, who I also know is a big video game person. So what is your favorite Star Wars video game?
This was so hard because there are so many good ones. A lot of the good ones I think are a little bit older, and so maybe not up the alley where you're looking for, where I know you're like a graphics very picky person.
James loves the Star Racer Pod Racer game. That's his favorite one.
It was so good. I still have it for my Game Boy. Like it had the like vibration thing and everything in it, so you get that little sensation. That one there. Rogue Squadron was good, but I would say my favorite is probably Knights of the Old Republic, known as KOTOR. The story is just so good. The characters and the flexibility and how you can play through it is just, it's just really nice. There's so much opportunity through it. The gameplay has its aged a little bit, but like everything else about it, like I love the characters they've created. I love the story that you go through, where you have your options of playing good or bad as you go through a lot of the elements. It's just it's an RPG really done so well that it has a lot of replayability for me. I really, really like that one.
That's one of Nick's favorite also. He has played it multiple times, all the way through from start to finish. So, yeah.
Yeah, I played hours, probably days, maybe even months of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, the mobile game. And when those characters finally started showing up, I got so excited. Like, finally,
yes,
Zalbar.
It's about time, yeah.
Yes.
James had to take this app off of his phone because of how often he was playing it.
It was draining his phone's battery and all of his hours.
Scheduled my life around it. It was not a good thing for me. So
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sorry to agree with you.
yep. So that's what I think. Tom, what do you think?
So it was 2003. I get this giant box. Live in your own Star Wars world. Make your own Star Wars world. Live your own life in a Star Wars world. I'm like, okay, let's put in the 5 CDs into my computer and download this giant game. You load into the game, you are literally just put right in the middle of a Star Wars universe. I was on Naboo. Star Wars Galaxies is definitely my answer. So I have never played a game where I felt I was actually a person like in the game. I was my own character making my way through the universe. You could be whatever you wanted to be. You want to be a bounty hunter, you be a bounty hunter. You want to be, a pistolier, you could be a pistolier. You really could choose whatever. I mean, you could have your own house. You can decorate your own house. You can have your own profession. I think I was an armor smith to start. So you're making armor for everyone in the galaxy. People are coming to your shop. They're buying things. It was amazing. I would play so much. I think my wife almost divorced me over the game because I would play so much. I would
3 in the morning, 3, 4 in the morning,
10 to 12 hours, 8 till 3 in the morning. You had no idea what time it is.
It was so easy to do.
It was such an amazing game. Right. There was always something to do. And thankfully, because of, teams that like to go back and revive old games, the game still lives. And Rob and I still play. Our server's down for the moment. They're actually adding a bunch of new planets and a bunch of new things, but it should be back sometime this year. And we can't wait till it comes back again. But Star Wars Galaxies is number 1 for me. Close second would be Jedi Academy, because it was the first Star Wars game that I've ever played where I could customize my character and have what the force powers that I wanted to have. And you couldn't have them all. You had to choose as you went through the game. And you could have dark side abilities, light side abilities. And I really love the story in Jedi Academy. So those are my 2 answers.
Is this Star Wars Galaxies? Was this an MMORPG?
It was an MMO, and it was
amazing,
hugely popular from 2003 to 2004, and then that was the same time WoW came out, Worlds of Warcraft, and Worlds of Warcraft had a much bigger player base. So Sony, who ran the game and got, they basically ran the game even more than LucasArts. And they said, okay, we want to be like WoW. So they took this overly, I wouldn't even say overly because that's what made it great, but intensely complex game. And they dumbed it down to like nine different professions. They took about 1 billion different combinations of professions and dumbed it down to 9. Wow. And they lost almost their entire player base, and it just died very quickly. And it's a shame because it was the greatest MMO I've ever played, and I've played probably about a dozen of them.
I am going to piggyback off of that.
Okay. Oh, yep, because you're up next.
Because I'm up
Sorry
next.
if I stole your answer.
And no, I knew you were going to. When I saw this question, it made me laugh because I knew Tom and I were both going to say the same thing. So, Tag, I'm going to give you more information about this because it was so amazing. You had professions, from fighting professions to even if you just wanted to be a crafter and just have a shop in a city and have people come buy stuff from you. You could do that and not even fight a single minute of your entire career in Star Wars Galaxies. All the way up to entertainers. They had dancers. And
that was me.
Okay, yeah.
I was a Wookiee entertainer. It was awesome.
It was awesome. You could be a dancer. You could play a musician. Everybody had to come into the cantina to get buffed, to get powered up. So they would all come talk to you. You got to know everybody in your galaxy. You got to know all these people. And when you were the top of it, they were like looking for you. Where's this character? And it was neat because it also introduced, to me anyway, to like basic coding, because you could run scripts, and what did they call them, that Tom, when you the things where you make it loop for yourself?
Oh, macros.
Yeah, you could run macros, and I'm like, oh, I'm coding. I was so excited that I was coding because I found these macros that I could type in, and anything that uses colon and backslashes, you were a real programmer. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. But like James, I'm sure he set up his dancer or his musician and walked away, came back 2 days later and had 500,000 credits there that he didn't have before, because people would come, click on you, watch you, then tip you, leave even if you weren't there.
Because of course, part of the macro is to make sure to put in chat, don't forget to tip.
Don't forget to tip your entertainers.
Right.
Yeah, And on top of it, this was the best, and this is what is really funny. There was a whole article by one of the original programmers about this. You could be bounty hunters, you could be fighters. They had Terracotta Masters, which were, it looked like Jedi skills, but you didn't have a lightsaber. You could be so many different professions, but Jedi was not one of them. So when the game first came out, there were absolutely no Jedis on the server whatsoever.
And it made the game better.
And it made the game better because people did what they wanted to do. And then 6 months into it, they said, okay, we need to open up this track to make Jedi a possibility. So they made this super hard track where each character would have to unlock and become a master at 3 different professions. But you didn't know what those 3 professions were that your character would have to do to be able to get this Jedi character. So then, instead of having people do the jobs that they wanted, people were just mastering every single job to try and check boxes until their Jedi character opened up. And Tom actually got a Jedi character on one of his. You spent months trying to get to it. You finally got it. And then you had to spend months to level up your Jedi because when you first got the Jedi, it was like a Padawan, basically. It was very basic. And if you pulled out a bounty or a lightsaber or tried to do any type of force moves or anything like that, bounty hunters could track you down and then kill you right away. So you had to be very, very secretive about where you're doing things. I remember the first time I saw a Jedi, this one guy was like, hey, come out to my house, let me show you something. And I'm like, okay, he's going to kill me, but sure, why not? So we fly all the way out, and you could build your own homes. You can make your own cities. Like they had main cities, but you can make your own cities. Tom and I made so many different cities on all our different servers, and so you can make your. We fly all the way out to his house. He's like, check this out, and he turns on his lightsaber, and the lightsaber. And I was like, oh my gosh! I still remember. It was very vivid. The first time I saw a Jedi in Star Wars Galaxies, I was like, oh. This is like, it was so awesome. But yeah.
And then he decapitated you.
And then he cut my head off and stole all my stuff. Yeah. But yeah, when it first came out, Tom and I both had little kids, like infants. And, it was like, okay, our wives would go to sleep. The babies would be crying or whatever. I remember both of us sitting at our computers, rocking our baby, trying to play with the other hand. The baby finally goes to sleep. We put him to sleep. Now we're not tired, so we go back down. And we're like, oh, feeding time is going to be in 2 hours. We'll stay up until his feeding time. So we stay up till the feeding time, feed him, put him back to bed, and then go to sleep. And finally we get like 4 hours of sleep every night, and it didn't even matter. It didn't even matter. We had so much fun. So
it was almost like we were leading dual lives. We had our Star Wars character, and then we had ourselves, and you really felt like your character was part of you.
Yeah, and more important.
And, I remember I was mayor of the city that we were running, and I was supposed to go to a birthday party that afternoon, and so my wife's yelling at me. She's yelling at me, and I'm like, wait, I can't leave. We can't leave yet because I have to marry these people from our city. Because I was a mayor, so I had to marry them. So she's banging at the door. She leaves without me. She left for the birthday party without me, because I had to marry 2 people inside a Star Wars game.
Star Wars game.
So
And the
that
two of you are
shows
still
the-
married, right? Everybody's still
we're
married.
still
Yes,
married,
everybody's
yeah.
still married. Yeah, we're still married.
Okay.
You forgave
And-
me at least
and the-
a little bit.
And the joy of the marriage thing is you had to find someone in game who could make rings for you, because of course
Yes.
that was also another part of the profession. So
Yeah, it was really funny. Tom and I had girl characters for a while, and I'm talking to this one other guy and
Yeah,
whatever.
but tell them why.
Oh, because we named them after our wives. That
Well,
why?
no, not just that.
Well, we
Because
did that,
When you're a
but
girl character, people give you free stuff.
oh yeah,
Oh,
in game,
yeah.
if you're a girl character, people are like, "Hey, here's." So we got to see what it felt like to be a girl without, like, oh, this is what it's like to have all this privilege. So yeah, so I was this girl in game and whatever, and this guy's like, we're talking and we're getting like we're being really friendly and whatever. And finally, I said to him, like, you know that I'm a guy, right? Because I didn't want him thinking, like, oh, maybe we could get married in real life also. Because I'm like, just letting you know, I have a wife and a kid. And, he's like, no, that's cool. But it'll be fun for our characters to get married. I was like, if you say so, I don't care, whatever. So, yeah. So it was very, very funny. So,
All right, well, you guys are going to play on our server.
Yes.
Once it goes back up again.
once it comes back
you
up,
guys
we'll
are
get you
playing.
guys on.
I was
And
gonna say, while Tage gives his answer, I'm gonna run because I think I know where my box of all the CDs is.
okay, yeah, go
Nice,
find them. Yes.
nice.
All right, and Tag, you can
Oh
give
my
us your
goodness.
answer of what your favorite game was, because I can guarantee it's not going to compare to Star Wars Galaxies.
I don't know, man. So I want to give you some backstory so you understand this. First of all, I am not a video game person. Like, I don't play a lot of video games. I don't, I'm a computer nerd, but I don't play games. Like, I've never had a gaming PC or anything like that. The only games I've ever played were console games. I never had a Game Boy Advance. I never had any of that stuff. I did have a Nintendo growing up. I had a Super Nintendo growing up, that kind of thing. Played Mario and all that, but I never was like a huge gamer. I would never consider myself a gamer. In 2015, I remember seeing a trailer for Star Wars Battlefront, and this is the remake, because everybody, anytime you say Battlefront, you got to be specific, because people think like Battlefront from like the early 2000s, which is like different. And they made Battlefront, and I remember thinking, wow, this game has some really beautiful graphics. Like, I think it's really well done. And so I got on and played. In fact, the first game was so important to me, and they had a multiplayer, and I wanted to play it with James. So we ended up buying a second PlayStation 4 because you couldn't play, like, you could play together, but if you wanted to play like online with other people, you had to have two different things. So I had mine, with my TV, and he had his with a different TV, and we would play online for a long time. Then in 2017, Star Wars Battlefront 2 comes out. Now, this looked amazing. The graphics were even better. And the thing that screwed Battlefront 2 was that they were going to have a loot box system, and people revolted and hated things. And DICE, the makers of the game, to their credit, quickly changed course. However, the damage had already been done, so it was never really as popular as the game as it could have been. But I played this game. It came out in 2017. I played this game probably hundreds, if not over 1,000 hours between 2017 and I was still playing this in 2020 probably for a little bit. And I went back and played it. I don't know. What was that, James? 8 months ago or something now?
Not even, yeah.
And I was like, oh, I still kind of remember, because the other thing with me, because I'm not a gamer, and James knows this from me playing other video games, there's too many buttons.
Yes.
So bad.
Yeah.
There's so many buttons. And he gets mad at me anyway, because I play Battlefront and I'll hit the wrong button. And he goes, why are you hitting that? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just hitting the button that I think it should be. And anyway, but I was actually fairly good at it. And I got fairly good that when we'd play in these multiplayer things, like, I was doing pretty well. I'd end up, in the bigger games, I'd be on the top, 5 or 6 people usually. Sometimes I'd be top 1, which is great. Like, that's great for somebody who's not a gamer. Although my favorite mode, or one of my favorite modes to play, was heroes versus villains, and it would be 4 heroes versus 4 villains. And when that started, I was pretty good, but people got better. And what ended up happening was, especially depending on who you were paired up with for your team, I'd get my butt kicked all the time. And James would even play with me, and we'd be on the same team, and we'd go into a server together. and we would just get slaughtered over and over, and we're just like, what is going on? So we kind of stopped playing that mode because of that.
That one was tough. You really needed to stay with your team all the time.
Okay,
and
yeah.
it seemed like the other team always understood that.
And,
Yeah.
We didn't.
and your team, you had 4 individuals who were like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you had cool stuff, right? Like the dark side people were cool because you got things like Boba Fett who could like jetpack around, which was neat. I really liked Bosk, who could like throw like
Dioxys and
Dioxys
proximity mine.
canisters. He had this. What was cool about him and Finn's character was the same way. Is you had special abilities, and if you timed it right, you could do one special ability, and by the time that went on cooldown, you could use the next one, and by the time that went on cooldown, you could use the last one, and by the time that last one went on cooldown, your first one would be available again. So if you were good, you could just keep cycling through and do pretty well. But what would happen is you get some jerk who plays Luke, and Luke's favorite thing is force push. And so you'd be on these maps that you could get pushed off the side of a tree or something, and he'd just come running up and boom, there you go.
And
Couldn't
then
do
your
anything
whole,
about it. You'd be Boba Fett flying around with your jetpack, and if a Jedi hits you, your jetpack shuts off. You fall to your death. So him, Obi-Wan, they added towards the end of their additions because they had a bunch of stuff come out as the time went on. Love that game. Now it makes me want to go play that game. Although I do want to play what you're talking about too. I wish that they would do Star Wars Galaxies with really good graphics today, because I would totally play that.
Yeah, Tom
We
and
talked about that all the time, that we would love to see Star Wars Galaxies with Battlefront graphics.
Yeah.
It would be phenomenal.
The graphics for Battlefront were just so good, and like the maps and stuff they had, I thought were really good. We didn't really play the space battle because there's a whole space battle thing, but they kind of like put it in there and kind of forgot about it. So most of the stuff was the ground battles, but they added cool stuff. They added ships you could fight in. They added a bunch of new levels and stuff. It was a great game. I was hoping that we'd get a Battlefront 3, but it sounds like EA and DICE don't really want to do anything with that anymore. And, the whole video game industry is kind of in shambles at the moment, but anyway, that's my game. I love it. And James found
there it is.
his
Complete Adventures.
I have my little CD box. I don't have the big
I'm not
cardboard
gonna dig
box
for mine,
anymore.
but mine are somewhere here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. They just stack the CDs on top of each other inside this one spot. So
Yep.
Mine are
You
all
guys
scratched
can
up.
pump in
Yeah.
all 5 CDs to download the game.
Now you can, when you get back into it, when you join one of these. So what they have now is, like Tom said, people just rewrote the code or took the Sony code and then hacked it and changed it and did whatever to it. But when you find the websites that have it, they're like, oh, are your CDs scratched? You can download a copy of your CDs from here or whatever it is. So that way you can get around the legal mumbo jumbo of from
Still
Sony.
dubious, but
yeah. But yeah, so you can, if you don't have the CDs anymore, you can still download it. All right, so that was our second question, right?
You're giving me, by the way, just before, I just want to mention, you're giving me like flashbacks to when I started with computers back in the day, of the 3.5 inch floppies, and it'd be like Microsoft Office, and it'd be like insert disk 17.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, even worse than
that's
that.
pretty much what it feels like to download the game.
Yeah.
Because if you start downloading, and then 4.5 days later, you finally get the game downloaded.
Even worse than that, I had a Commodore 64 when I was a kid, and they had the 5.25 inch discs, or 5.5 inch discs, and those didn't have the little protection on the reader itself. So, and as a kid, you put you pulled it out, you threw it somewhere. So then, and there was like, you needed like 3 or 4 of those to get even Pac-Man to run or whatever, and it was always the 4th one that you put in that it was like error, because you scratched it up because it didn't have a protective coating on it. So that was even more fun, let me tell you. Almost, I don't know if you guys watch The Simpsons. Apu did his master's thing, and it was all on the punch card computers. Do you remember that? And Homer, he had a giant box of all these punch cards that were in the perfect order that they needed to be in to run whatever his thesis was. And Homer knocked it over, and they all went all over the place. And he was like, well, so much for that, because he didn't know what the order was or something like that. So
nice.
Yeah,
that's where the term patch comes from. I just found this out, that that on the punch cards, when they would have code that wouldn't work, they would put tape over the holes and then they'd punch new things.
Oh,
And that's where the term patch comes from, because
they would
patch the
patch
bad
it.
code. And
Wow,
yeah.
look at that. See, you learn things on Around the Dejarik Table, folks. That's why we bring them around here. All right, that's it. Question 2 is all done. James, it's your question now.
Yeah, so I want to dig specifically into the Star Wars universe, and I want you to tell me who is an underrated character that you believe deserves more attention. And Tom, I want you to go first.
So I don't know if this character is really underrated, but he's not really, one of the main characters, you would say. But mine is Wedge Antilles. I'm a huge original trilogy fan. I mean, I've probably seen each movie about 45 times, if not more. And I just think he'd be a neat character to explore. Like I would absolutely watch a Disney Plus show or a movie about young Wedge Antilles, because I think he has a neat story, being an Imperial defector, and joining the rebellion. I almost think it would be a little bit like Andor. You could probably do almost pretty much the same type of story with Antilles as you did with Andor. And I would be happy. And you could make it different from Andor, because Andor is more of like, talking about video games, the ground game, whereas you could do like Wedge Antilles, you could do like a space kind of thing where he's, he comes up as a pilot, a lot of space adventures. So for me it's Wedge. And I mean, if you think about it, he's one of the heroes of the rebellion, helped destroy Death Star 1. I mean, he's the only other survivor other than Luke out of the Red Squadron. And
he was in all the movies,
hero.
right? Like
he was in every movie.
He was the only one who didn't die through the.
He survived
original
both
trilogy.
Death Stars. That's so good.
Yeah, and then he was a hero for Death Star 2 as well. So I would love to see a little bit more of a spotlight on Wedge. So that's my answer. Who are we up to? Robert.
Well, that's a good answer. I agree. I think he's a fun character, and every time you hear his name, you're like, "Ooh, what happened?" I picked Nien Niob. He just because he's funny looking. I think he's a interesting looking character, and you don't spend all the time making a prosthetic that detailed and that fancy for, I don't want to say a small character, but for someone who doesn't have as big of a story as we could have gotten out of this character, I guess. He went with Lando in the Millennium Falcon, but I want to see him almost like maybe in Rebels or Rogue Squadron is what I wrote down. Like, same thing with Wedge. Like, Wedge would be another great one that they could do a Rogue Squadron type TV series or movie about, and have Wedge in there, have Nien Niob in there, because you want to see more of him, and whether he's leading a whole group or just in his own X-Wing or whatever it is, but just to have a little bit more, find a little bit more backstory on the guy, even if it's a 4 story where we have more missions with him later on or whatever the case is. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he's in Galaxy's Edge, right? Is he the one that's flying? Yeah.
Yes.
And his head is huge in that, by the way. Like, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize he was this big. And then you go back and you watch the movies, and he's not. He's tiny. So I'm like, okay, that glass between us and him as the pilot must be a magnifying glass of some sort to make him look so big. But he's cool in that. So I was like, oh, this would be cool if we had him in more things. So yeah, that's my answer. Tag, what do you think?
You have a great answer. By the way, to go back to the last question, he was a playable character in Star Wars Battlefront, and I really enjoyed playing his character, actually. Quite
There
a
you
bit.
go.
I believe his
one of your
weapon.
favorites.
Well, yeah, he had a blaster, but he also had the little detonators.
And he set the turret up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and he'd set the turret up. I loved him with the turret because you could just set it; it would auto attack. Anyway, okay. So this also goes back to Battlefront. This goes to Battlefront 2. And there was a character in there, and I just loved him. I liked how he looked. I liked how he talked. He was kind of a smartass. And it was, see if I can pronounce this correct, Shriv Surgov. He's Duros, so he looks kind of like the bounty hunter Cad Bane, that same species. So he's got kind of like a blue, skin with these kind of cool red orange kind of eyes. And his story in that video game was that he was part of the Rebel Alliance, and he was at the Battle of Endor, where the main character from Star Wars Battlefront 2, Iden Versio, comes in and defects to him and all of this stuff. So just kind of interesting. He's got kind of a smart aleck attitude. He's kind of funny. Some of the cut scenes and stuff that he's in is just wonderful. At one point he meets Leia, and they kind of have like a back and forth in the video game. If you haven't played the campaign in Battlefront 2, I highly recommend it just to go check out Shriv, because he's just awesome. I just like him. If you've played Jedi Fallen Order, is that the first one?
Yep.
There's another character in there too that's the like pirate guy that has all the arms. I don't remember his name, but he's kind of got that same kind of attitude of just like, I don't know, just kind of a fun attitude. James, who is your character?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I think Tom might have the actual right answer if we're allowed to have right answers on opinion questions, because there's so many good reasons, and Wedge is always just kind of left out. Like, even if we go outside of Star Wars into the real world, it's like the actor who played Wedge is the uncle to Ewan McGregor, who played young Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's like, clearly dude is meant for Star Wars and telling those stories. But to bring another name to the table, I think one that gets overlooked, maybe not as underrated, would be Qui-Gon. I think when people think Jedi, a lot of times the default is Obi-Wan for everything that he brought, or Luke as you get into the original trilogy. I think they kind of get that, but Qui-Gon was just so interesting for his approach, his challenge to the council. The books did him so well in so many of the early things, let alone the complicated legacy. And then Tage always likes to tell the story about the song, The Duel of Fates, and like the true meaning behind all of that, where it's this argument of it was going to be the fate of Anakin, whether Qui-Gon wins or Darth Maul wins, that kind of shaped what the galaxy looked forward to. And so it's like, oh, it's that great what if it would have been Qui-Gon that survived, not Darth Maul in that battle? How would that have reshaped Anakin to what the world looks like? And I think he would have brought that fatherly figure amongst other things. And I just think he gets forgotten.
If Qui-Gon wins, would Anakin have gotten the Toyota pickup truck? Like in Back to the Future?
Absolutely. Would have been all shiny and waxed.
Would have been all shiny and waxed. Biff would have been out there waxing it up for him. Yeah.
Yep. Because you guys heard that, right? That was an interview with I don't know, I'm terrible with names. It was the interview with cowboy hat guy who's
Dave Filoni.
Oh,
Dave
Filoni? Okay.
Yeah, because he said he sat down and talked with George Lucas about all this stuff, and he's like, yeah, it's why it's called Duel of the Fates, because of and all this stuff. And when I saw this interview, my brain, my Star Wars brain just went.
Yeah, and now that you mention it, it's doing the same thing to me right now. It's like making perfect sense. So yeah, no, I never heard that before, but now I have. Learning so many things from you guys, yeah.
Interview on YouTube, and I'll send you the link so you can put it with the show so people can check it out.
Check it out. That's awesome. I love it.
Quick thing about Qui-Gon, he's such a great character for Star Wars because he's not your typical, subservient Jedi. He questions the Jedi.
Yeah.
And to me, you need a character like that. You can't have the Jedi just blindly following what the Jedi code says. He questions things, and I thought he was a really good character. I was actually upset that he didn't make it past episode 1, much like Darth Maul.
Yeah.
But I understand you need new characters, you need to sell new toys in the next movie.
But both of them would have sold a lot more characters. They could just put them in different clothes a little bit. Darth Maul could get an extra tattoo on his face or something like that, and that would be different for episode 2.
Worked for Padme.
It did work for Padme. Yeah, she lasted all 3 episodes. And she was in all the Clone Wars cartoons too, so it worked out
Well,
perfect.
they could have sold 1 billion to Padme things because you got to have a different action figure for every outfit she had. And I think in episode 1 alone, she had like 17 outfits.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There was that one scene, I can't remember what it is now, but there was a scene that she was in for like 10 seconds and she was wearing something and she's like, well, I've got to go meet Anakin now. And then the very next, like, you'd think like she'd walk across the hall or something. And then she was in a completely different outfit.
A whole
I'm
new
like,
outfit.
when did this happen?
The exact opposite of cartoons. Like cartoons, the people wear the same thing the entire time. She has 15 different outfits in one episode. So, yeah.
That's why I'm surprised Ray went through all 3 movies with the exact same outfit. I'm like, doesn't this girl change?
And especially, like, I get the first movie, she was, the poor version of her. But then she was part of the Resistance. And at that point,
Right.
you think she would have another outfit.
Right. Get some resistance clothes or something. I don't know.
All right.
Especially
And
for, like Lincoln's talk of like moving from a desert planet to somewhere else. Like she's probably cold.
yeah. Yeah. Normal
Well,
temperature
Anakin
for
said
her.
that. He was freezing his balls off on the ship.
Space is cold.
Space is very cold, yeah. Much colder than a desert planet with, multiple suns.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
all right, Tom, you got the last question for us.
All right. So I was thinking this is all going to come out like weird because there's just so much to this question, and I don't even. Maybe it's just too deep. So it comes because I'm an original trilogy fan, and I'm still a kid. When I watch Star Wars, I feel like a 10-year-old kid. So that's the direction kind of I'm asking this question. So do you feel that the original trilogy's mystique about the Jedi, this religion that nobody really knows, they're supposed to be extinct, do you think Luke's journey has been diminished with all the new Disney stuff coming out, with all these new Jedi? I mean, you've got Ahsoka, you've got Ezra, you've got Grogu, you've got other Jedi popping up here and there. How does that make you feel as an older Star Wars fan, thinking that, okay, we thought Luke was like the last Jedi, him and his dad, that was it. And now we have all these other Jedi. What do you guys think?
Well, I don't think we have all these other Jedi. If we went back to like hundreds of Jedi, suddenly, there was a whole planet of Jedi people, then I would be like, okay, you totally ruined it. But the fact that, the Force is around all of us and the Force will guide us and things like that, I felt that the Force would be strong enough with the select few people that more people could become Force sensitive and possibly Jedis and all that stuff. The latest angle with Ahsoka teaching
Sabine Wren.
Yeah,
Sabine,
Sabine
yeah.
Wren. Her teaching her how to use the Force and her discovering that she can. Nick likes that idea because it doesn't now make it like the select few who are picked, but like if anybody works hard enough at something, you can be it. As in, if you work hard enough at football, you could be in the NFL. There's only 1,000 total NFL football players out of 3.5 million middle school kids who play football. If you work hard enough, you can go from that 3.5 million to the 1,000. So I understand that angle of it, but I think the Force should be a little bit more selective. Not that if you just work hard enough, you can become a Jedi. I don't mind the extra Jedis. I actually enjoy the extra Jedis. I even enjoyed Broom Boy when we saw him in the movies. I was
Whatever
like,
happened to him?
yeah, it was different director. He went away. I have a theory that Jod will be Broom Boy's dad. That's my theory. And I talked about this with Nick, and he goes, but Broom Boy was a slave on the planet with the casino planet.
Cantobite?
Yeah. And I said, yes. So Jod, being the gambler and pirate type guy he is, kept losing and losing and losing. And his final bet was, I will bet my son that I'm going to win this. And he lost his son in a bet. And that's how his son became a slave there. And Nick was like, "Wow, that went really dark pretty quick." But yeah, so that's how I feel that Jod could then become Broom Boy's dad. But I liked Broom Boy. I was like, oh my gosh, there's hope for more Jedi, especially knowing how bad the bad guys were getting. We needed a good guy that could counter them, that could balance them out. Star Wars was always about good versus evil, light versus dark, and all that stuff. So we needed to have a good, strong enough. So it doesn't bother me. I actually really enjoyed Rebels and Kanan and Ezra. I love that storyline. I love Kanan going from, hiding to using the Force every once in a while, to then him teaching Ezra because he could tell Ezra was strong in the Force. So I enjoyed it. It doesn't bother me. I know it does bother Tom more, but it doesn't bother me. Tag, what about you? Does it bother you?
I don't think it really bothers me because I think about, the galaxy. I wrote universe, but it's really the galaxy. The galaxy is a huge place. And, just as I don't know somebody who's living, in Namibia or what, James will get that joke because our exchange student's obsessed with Namibia. But I don't know anybody in Namibia that, at all, period. And so who's to say there isn't somebody there that I'm just not aware of, not everybody's going to know everything and everyone and whatever. And, it seems to me why would only one or two Jedi survive Order 66? It seems like if one person did it, multiple, depending on how many there were and stuff like that. And then also it seems to me Obi-Wan in episode 4 says that the Force is in all of us. And so to me, it just seems like it's a skill you have to do, right? Like anybody could probably do something with the Force if they attune themselves to it and put the effort towards it or whatever. And obviously, just like anything, we have people on Earth who are extremely smart, intelligent, brilliant individuals. And then there's the people that are not, that, they just go and they do their normal job and, they work at a coffee shop or they work at an office somewhere or whatever. They're not out there, they're not Neil deGrasse Tyson solving, our universe's questions or whatever. And so that could be kind of like the Jedi. So I don't think it really makes that big of a difference. Now with Luke, I feel like Luke is the person who's bringing the traditional Jedi training and philosophy and the structure kind of back, right? It seemed like that's what his job was he wants to be like his father. He learned from Obi-Wan and he wants to make it more official. And we see this in the sequel movies where he's trying to teach Kylo Ren and he's trying to get a Jedi Academy together and stuff. And he taught, depending on what you consider canon, he taught Leia how to use the Force a little bit and all of these things. And so to me, I think that Luke and the Skywalker saga is just one small part of this giant galaxy that we're following along with. And I don't think it diminishes that to have other things going on and other Force users elsewhere, because as far as they know, maybe there are no other Jedi, but it's impossible to know. It's not like we're going to cross universes here. It's not like Professor X in X-Men that puts the little thing on and he can see where every mutant is. They're just not like that, is my opinion on it. So no, I don't think it diminishes it. I think I like the variety and seeing different things. And then you get really dumb Force users like Grogu. Grogu can barely do anything with the Force. He's like, oh, my little ball thing. And then I'm tired and I have to take a nap.
Yep.
What the heck?
I mean, he is only 50 years old, so you have to give him.
I do hope that, and maybe people don't want this, but I want this. I do hope that we learn what his species is and learn a little bit more about them, because, we had Yoda, which was just Yoda, and then we had Yaddle, which was kind of cool, but what's with the hair? And now we have Grogu. It's it'd be really cool to learn about what's their species called.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So, by the way, I've come around to Grogu, but they could have picked a better name. I don't know. Yoda was a cool name. Yaddle was terrible. Grogu,
we call him Norman on our show, because when he was just going by the child, one of my coworkers loved him, thought he was the cutest thing ever. And she's like, who, Norman over there? And we were like, that's a great name. So before he became Grogu, we were calling him Norman because we hated calling him the child. So yeah, so you can call him Norman if you want to. It'll be much better of a name than Grogu, sure.
One of my old coworkers used to call her car Norbert, and that for some reason reminded me of that. Anyway, James, what do you think about all this?
You two have opened up so many questions. I thought I was sure, but here Tom is right. We are philosophical with this because I'm realizing there's such a differentiation between Jedi and Force user that becomes such a play in this as you're talking about it. Because I think Force users continuing to exist makes sense because they had to go and find Force users to train to be Jedis. It wasn't just they come from this planet or it has to be a child of a Jedi. And so I think that becomes so interesting. So the answer to the question is no, it doesn't bother me. But carrying on with more of my thought process is I think it's interesting how like the Jedi has to evolve. Like Tage was talking about with Luke trying to bring it back and figure it out. Like at this point, we're down to little legacies that kind of carry it on and try to make it work, like the Kanan to Ezra relationship that you talked about. And you've lost so much of that history and tradition that it's kind of just becoming what is this new Jedi Order kind of going to shape out to be, if there even is, or if it's just these rumored mythical beings, right? And so hopefully that means we get a lot more interesting stories kind of in that kind of gray area. And I like the idea of, 100 or so Jedi survived the purge and we're able to kind of find whatever and make that work. But I also like to argue not all Star Wars has to be Jedi. I think that's one of the biggest faults of what we've run into with a lot of our stories and series. Like I will go to bat for Solo, a Star Wars series, for a long time. I think that got brought down unnecessarily, and I really want to know what happens next in that one, and I'm not going to get a clear answer on that one in Cinematic World. And like it frustrates me because it's like we try new things and then it's like, no, let's go back to Skywalkers. We just want the Jedis we're comfy with.
Well, and Star Wars fans, all they wanted, people online I saw were complaining, all they wanted was something outside of the Skywalker timeline, do something that's not Skywalker. And then they went and they did the thing for the Acolyte, and everybody hated it. And so Disney's like, well, okay, which I have to bring this up because I bring this up every time I talk about Star Wars. Nobody hates Star Wars as much as Star Wars fans.
That is 100% accurate because every Star Wars fan has their idea in their head of what the perfect Star Wars story is. And when the one that's on film or on television isn't the one that's in their head, it's obviously stupid because this is what I had built up. Oh my gosh, Luke Skywalker is coming back in episode 7. He's going to be awesome. And then when he's not, what the heck? Where did he go? Why is he not here? Why did we only see him for 5 seconds? But yeah, Star Wars fans are the worst. So,
and then I have a theory about why there's so many things with Star Wars fans too. And I'll try to make this quick. Is if you were a child when you saw the original trilogy, that is Star Wars for you. And when you watch, in fact, Tom, you said it earlier in this episode. When you watch Star Wars, I assume you meant episode 4, 5, 6. You are brought back to being that child and having those feelings of you being a child watching that. Now, when and I don't know if this is the case for you, but I would say a good percentage of people went and saw the prequels, and now you're an adult. And you watch the prequel, and because you have not seen it before, you are an adult when you experience that, and you don't have that same feeling, so you don't like it. Kids that saw the prequels love the prequels. Now, when those kids got older and the sequels came out, they don't like the sequels because, again, you're not a kid anymore. You were a kid, and you have that nostalgia and that stuff that attaches you to those stories as a child, and you don't have that anymore. But people that grew up with the sequels, they think the sequels are fine. So I think that that's generally what happens with Star Wars fans is whenever you were a kid, whatever you were introduced for Star Wars first, that is Star Wars for you. And anything that's kind of different from that, you part of your love for it is that feeling that it gives you of when you were a child, and you don't have that anymore. And so I wish people would like realize that and just like the universe. I like the universe. Every Star Wars show that we've watched, I've enjoyed parts of because I love the universe. I love this kind of like old, crappy looking, like everything is really cool. Like they have space travel, but everything looks old and screwed up. I think that's so awesome. They have bounty hunters and they have Jedi. They have all this cool stuff. And it's just neat to be in that universe. And people get so bogged down with like the little things that they hate about it. You know, there's stuff I hate about it too. In hindsight, there's no way they could have known this, but with Carrie Fisher passing away, they should have just let her be blown out of that ship and die. But she brought herself back in all weird. Like that was awkward and strange. But you know, what can you do?
What a chumpy way for Admiral Akbar to go out.
I know, right?
Yeah, they didn't even like mention it.
And there was no big like
Funeral
for him or anything. He just went away, and then the movie ended, and it was all over. But even going back a little bit, where you were saying if you were a kid, my son was a child with the prequels, so he loved. I mean, I think everybody loved Duel of the Fates, but he loved episodes 1, 2, and 3 more than 4, 5, and 6. And I also think the other problem with that is if you look at the lightsaber battles in 4, 5, and 6, they didn't know in the 70s and 80s how to do what they were doing. You know, it was basically like, hey, you two guys go have a little fight there with these two sticks, and we'll draw some lines over top of it. But then when they did the prequels, they were like, okay, we're bringing in masters, you know, martial arts masters to do this. We're teaching them all these fancy moves. So it's also visually much more stimulating 1, 2, and 3 than 4, 5, and 6 are, just because of the times, you know. So my son loves them so much more than he does 4, 5, and 6. Because to us, 4, 5, and 6 were unbelievable. You know, seeing that lightsaber was amazing for the first time. But then when you see Darth Maul's lightsaber and Darth Maul's fighting versus it, you're like, you know. So I also understand why the kids of different generations like it, because also as it gets older, you know, and the newer generations of the kids, the special effects and everything is fancier and fancier and better as it goes. So they're going to fall in love with those more than 4, 5, and 6 because they didn't have that ability at the time. Even though George Lucas went back multiple times to change and fix and update things, it still wasn't.
I was just mentioning to James, we just watched the other day because we're trying to get our exchange student he's only seen episode 4 like forever ago and he couldn't remember it. So we're trying to get him through it before we go to Disneyland at the end of this month. And because we want him to understand what's going on in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And so
Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
Yes, I realized after I said that I should have said it the other way. But I was laughing because we had just seen all these cool lightsaber battles. And the scene with Obi-Wan and Vader, they're just kind of like...
And Vader just has one hand.
Other.
Yeah. Oh.
And I turn to James and I go, this seems really weak compared to...
Uh-huh.
Well, because we watched
Rogue One.
Rogue One, and he's like knocking people down and stabbing through people. And then he's there with Obi-Wan and they're just like... Whoom, whoom. Like, what the hell? Anyway,
yeah, it is drastically different, which is also what's funny when you end 3 and then you go from 3 with all the big lightsabers and, you know, better special effects and stuff, and then if you watch 3 to 4, you're like, wait, what just happened? Like, it's really, you know that you're going back in actual time when you're watching 4 versus 3.
But that original trilogy, those special effects hold up pretty well.
Yeah, they do. But, you know, but when you see, like, the lightsaber battles are drastically different. Right. So, but
I'll debate with anybody that the Luke Vader lightsaber battle was the best of all the lightsaber battles. I don't care how many flips and how many minutes long your lightsaber fight is. That 1.5 minute battle between Luke and Vader, you can't top it. It was so emotional.
Yeah, it was. Well, it was very emotional.
Yeah, the gravity of that.
Yeah, and Vader was, you could see him. He was going hard with his lightsaber. He was trying to knock it out of his hand, and you could tell there was a lot of power in there versus the Vader Obi-Wan fight in Episode 4.
But James, you talk about, you really like the lightsaber battle at the end of Episode 3, right? That's like your favorite.
Yeah, so as the youth on this podcast, I think that's what Tom is pointing to. Like, theatrically, the moment of the double lightsaber reveal on Maul is probably my iconic theater moment. Like, that is what sold me on Star Wars and guaranteed it was going to be a thing. And I think for the same reason Tom is saying, because this is like the emotional point of like good versus evil, a battle for someone's soul at this point, in case Anakin's versus Anakin's in both 3 and 6. And so, like, for me, it's like this is the moment that shapes so much of what the story is to me and what it becomes. Also, probably because we like to argue, depending on the order you watch the series, 1 through 6, it's the story of like Anakin, but if you start 4 through 6 and then go back, it's the story of Luke and how he fought against Vader and all those things. But that's getting off topic. But yeah, like, but Tom, I think you do make a good point that fight holds up a lot better than I think I give it credit. So I will concede that can at least be a tie.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, plus that whole sequence with the Emperor, of like just the sinisterness of him telling him like his friends are gonna die, and like he's planned all of this, and like he's screwed, and then like at the end where he's like, "Then young Skywalker, you will die." It's so like cold and evil, and he just goes, and he's just so angry about it, and like I don't know, that's like the Emperor kind of thing, you know. I think in the prequels, the Emperor sometimes comes off as almost a caricature of himself when he's like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, and then Tom, you never got to answer your own question.
I'm sorry, Tom.
We went off on this tirade here.
So 10-year-old me says yes. The mystique is ruined. Luke's not the only Jedi, and we were set up to believe that Luke was the only Jedi, like the only hope, because if there were others in hiding, there were other survivors, you would think Yoda would have went out and try to band them together to fight the Empire, but he didn't. He was hiding on Dagobah to die, so, and just waiting for Luke. Basically, I guess he knew Luke was coming. So why not just go out and try to find all the Jedi if there were Jedi? He had to have known if there were Jedi that survived.
Don't you think, though, that maybe Yoda... I feel like Yoda left in Episode 3 with a lot of shame that even as powerful as a Jedi as Yoda is, he couldn't fight against the Emperor and win. And so I feel like a reason he wouldn't go out would be because it's kind of like the Obi-Wan thing. Like, Obi-Wan was in hiding because that's what he needed to do. And I think that would be the same thing with Yoda, that he just... I feel like Yoda felt like such a failure that like he just became like a hermit. Like, I can't go. I tried, and I'm just getting older and weaker. Like, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to. And the Empire is so much more powerful. Sorry.
Right, absolutely. But then now adult me says, I don't care if there's a billion Jedi. I want to see more Star Wars. If all these Jedi start showing up, fine by me. They all come out of hiding. You want to tell me their story? I'll take it, because to me, Star Wars is like pizza. There's no bad pizza. Pizza's pizza. There's no bad Star Wars. Like, even what's the show that you guys were just talking about? Everybody hated
Acolyte.
The Acolyte. Yeah. I mean, it was still Star Wars. There were still good parts of it that I found awesome. So I'll still watch it. You put it on, and I'm gonna watch it. So I'm kind of torn. But I'd still say, that give me more Star Wars. I know Disney's cutting back. Rob and you and I were just talking about this, how in the next 2 years, there's barely going to be any Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm really disappointed by that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was oversaturated. I think it was about quality, not quantity. And they should have just focused on making more quality stuff than worrying about how much content they're putting out.
And
Tom, do you think? Well, actually, this is for both of you because I'm just curious. Do you think that an episodic series is the best format for Star Wars? Because to me, they did some movies and the
Right.
sequel trilogy and wasn't
Mhm.
so great, but I feel like they've really knocked it out of the park with the series. And again, as
Mhm.
someone who comes into the Star Wars universe looking at the universe, you can build uh you could build that whole universe in an episodic series. The only thing I would say about the show that concerns me is that they don't have enough episodes. Like I
Right.
feel
Mhm.
like they do a great job doing all this buildup. Ahsoka, great example. Ahsoka, they did all this buildup, and I was the person. I love Thrawn. I was this person. I was so excited. I thought the last episode, Thrawn, they're going to get back to the galaxy, and Thrawn is going to like obliterate an entire fleet. It's going to be amazing, and that whole last episode just kind of limped along, and then they're
Yeah.
like, "That's
Mhm.
the end of the season," and it was like,
Yep.
"Why couldn't you have?" And I heard from someone else too that that was the problem with the Acolyte is if it just had a few more episodes to like get where it was going, that
Mhm.
people probably would have liked it more, but it just didn't get there.
It was anticlimactic by the time it got to the end.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Real fast to answer Tag's question. I don't mind the episodic series. I actually like it if it was more. Like even Skeleton Crew, which was great, but it was only 8 episodes. And most of the episodes were 25 to 32 minutes. Like I understand, Disney is saying, "Hey, do whatever you want. Here's the money, make it work." But it could have been 45-minute episodes. But then again, I also don't want them just filling time to fill time. Like, I don't know if you guys watched Ted Lasso or not, but
Yes.
I guess it was season 1, they wanted to do 10 episodes. Apple told them to do 12 episodes. So they said, fine, we'll give you 2 more episodes. That's why you got the Christmas episode that came out in July, because they said, okay, this is an extra one. And also the episode where Beard just had a weird night after the celebration. That was another one that they said, okay, well, we're going to this is what our story is. You want 2 more? We're going to throw 2 more episodes in here. Filler episodes, basically like filler episodes.
Mhm.
Yeah. They're like, fine, here's 2 filler episodes for you since that's what you want. So I don't want filler time and I don't want filler episodes. But I do want you to be able to tell a good story. Now, the Skeleton Crew was like a 4-hour movie, basically, between those 8 episodes. Could I sit in the movie theater for 4 hours and watch a 4-hour movie? No. Do I want them to cut it down to 2.5 to 3 hours? Not that either. So I think the episodic is best. So there we go. I think the episodes are better, but I also love going to the movie theater and seeing it on the big screen. That is also so much. Seeing a lightsaber battle on a 60-foot tall screen is amazing. So
or space battles. One of
or
my favorite
space
things about
battles.
Star Wars,
Yeah.
space battles.
Yeah, even everyone starts that way. So, Tom, do you want to try and answer faster than I did before we lose the feed again?
No, I think I already answered.
Okay, good.
Oh, you mean about the
About Tag's
like
question?
Disney Plus? Yeah. So I'd say Disney Plus. I think it gives more time for character development. Like you said, it's almost like watching a 4-hour movie, but just split up into episodes. It doesn't have to be all action. I think Disney realizes now with a show like Andor, where it wasn't just action, pew, 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 pew. It can be character development and character driven.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. I'd like to see a little more like shows like that.
And also, so many people, if you rank the Disney Plus Star Wars shows, have Andor at either number 1 or number 2 of their favorite shows. And it just goes to show you there wasn't one lightsaber in that entire series.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can... Same thing with Skeleton Crew. Skeleton Crew was very well written. Andor, very well written. I think Acolyte's biggest problem was the writing of it because it slowly limped along. You had a couple of battles.
Some of the acting was pretty bad too.
And then the acting, so like the directors were telling them this is the way Jedi are supposed to act. So then the acting was so rigid and so like monotone that it really ruined it. And then So I think that had a lot of things wrong with it, all of which were from production side. If they wrote a better story and made them act a little bit more like in the books, when you read the High Republic books, they're not all super stiff, you know. So if they would have let them act that way, I think it would have been a lot better.
And I think that's the argument of where you have to choose which style you go with, because the Acolyte and maybe even the Obi-Wan series were short enough that they probably would have worked better as a 2-hour movie to go with everything you needed.
Yeah, if they cut out all the extra stuff and just made it a 2-hour movie, it probably could have been better. Yeah, I agree with that. So, all right. Well, that I think is going to conclude, especially with all the technical glitches that we're having here at the end, conclude our latest episode of Bantha Milk Presents Around the Dejarik Table. We want to thank our two guests, Tage and James. So first, this is your opportunity to go ahead and plug away. Tage, one more time. Tell us all the places that we can find you.
So if you like Disneyland, and sometimes we talk about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, you can head on over to the DL Weekly DL Weekly podcast at dlweekly.net. James is also over there. He does some of our trivia and stuff like that. If you like this format of going around and answering questions, and you also happen to like Disney, head on over to thehubcrawl.com, where we do the same thing. In fact, if you want to hear Rob on an episode, that one should be coming out a little bit before this episode, I think, goes up on the 7th. So you can listen to us talk about some stuff over there.
Awesome. And James, what about you? Go ahead and plug away.
I just plug Tage everywhere because that lets him talk about Disneyland and all of his favorite stuff, and then he makes good friends with it. But if you are a Star Wars Galaxy's Edge fan and know some trivia that I can use to stump Tage and his co-host Teresa, that's dlweekly.net/trivia. You can hear me about every other week on that podcast.
That is awesome. Well, thank you guys very much. Tom, do you remember... You wrote an ending for us way back. Do you remember what your ending was? Did you find it? All right, go ahead.
So the ending we came up with was, I think it was Let the Wookiee Win.
Okay. So there we go. Until then, everybody let the Wookiee win. Well, you know what happens if you don't. All right.